Good evening and welcome to the May meeting of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners. I'm Jim Cloutier. Members of the board are here, and as we customarily do, we normally open our meeting with a pledge of allegiance. So anyone who wishes to join with us in doing that, please feel free. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, stop your engines. Oh, excuse me.
And note everybody's present. Normally we would proceed directly to the approval of the minutes, but I instead would request a motion to table that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded till later in the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we have informational reports. First, we have something from the Regional Communications 2024 newsletter for the first quarter. We have received it. I'm sure it's on the website at this point somewhere. We're going to get a presentation tonight related to that as well.
No, that is for commissioners' information only and information of the public, but no presentation this evening.
Secondarily, I see somebody I recognize who's here on behalf, I imagine, of the Jail Board of Visitors for the annual report. Sheriff, be glad to hear from you, and somebody from the board who has a presentation to make, if that's what's going
Thank you,
on.
Commissioner. Yes, I want to introduce probably definitely my longest-standing Jail Board of Visitors member. Colleen started in 2013 when having a Board of Visitors was in law, but it wasn't mandatory. And it seemed like a good thing to do, so Colleen was the mayor of Westbrook at the time, and I thought, it'd be good to have a mayor of a pretty big city on there. And at that time, it was important to note that there was no guidance on who it was. So I had members of the clergy, bank presidents, police chiefs. There were about 15 people. And quite frankly, thought we got a lot done at that time. As time has gone on, it's become mandated. And about 3 or 4 years ago, the makeup of the board had to be specific to, I believe, 5 people. So probably half the board was still, Board of Visitors was still on, so I had to fire them from their voluntary position because they didn't meet the criteria that the state mandated. Recently, the legislature did their thing and changed it again and made sure that it was 7 people. And again, certain people can only be a Board of Visitor, have to meet 4 times a year. They have to have certain kind of training. Now keep in mind, these are all volunteers. So we've seen a lot of people look at what's mandated and basically go, thanks but no thanks. So we're in a rebuilding mode. I think we have about 4 out of 7, so we're looking for the other 3 to finish that out. But Colleen Hilton is our chair. She's got, if I were going to give an award, she's got the person for the perfect attendance at all of the meetings and stuff. So I'll turn this over to Colleen Hilton.
Thank you, Sheriff. I assume you've all had a chance to look at the annual report, so I won't go through a lot of detail that's contained within that report. Suffice it to say, obviously, the jail is the largest jail in the state of Maine, and we have 140 staff members. When I appeared before you last year, I think we spent a little bit of time talking about how very difficult it has been to hire enough staff to keep the census up in the jail, that we can be to a capacity of 570, but we're actually averaging more like 240 now. But also, over 4,000 inmates are processed over the course of the year. So an awful lot of work goes into the smooth operations of the jail. I'm also happy to report we've resumed most of the programming that was really on, a lot of it was stalled during COVID, as you can imagine. And of course, with all the outbreaks and other public health issues that present, no easy feat to run a jail of that size with the diversity that this area sort of experiences. We do have Armor Medical, who's our partner for the medical care, and as you can imagine, the types of inmates that we're seeing are increasingly more complex and obviously very diverse. But speaking of diversity, some of our most successful hiring this past year has been from new Mainers, and I'm going to focus on, in a couple of minutes, on some of our recommendations for what we need to do next year to accommodate the diversity of our workforce. The sheriff talked about the change in statute, which makes it really difficult to have a board that's showing up and staying committed because there's a lot of requirements. And we're going to spend this year doing a fair amount of rebuilding because there's a lot of new policies and procedures that we're going to need to embark upon. So one of our requirements is to inspect the jail, and I say that lightly, inspect, because we do go in, we tour. We have free, open access to correction officers, administration, and inmates, and we query them on how things are and what they might need or want, and you can imagine there's a lot of wants. But in all fairness, it's usually really positive feedback, even from the inmates. We have, as I said, resumed most of the programming from previous years, and that's very good news because there's lots of help to get those that are being discharged to get resettled and be successful and not have to come back. So for the coming year, our recommendations, which were, I believe, in the annual report, is to update our policies, procedures, and as the sheriff said, we've got to have specific orientations, specific trainings for the Board of Visitors. And we also need to recruit more members to be on the board because we have lost a few in the last year. One of the recommendations we had also were to upgrade some additional security cameras on the perimeter of the jail. You know where the jail is located, and you're, I'm sure, very familiar with encampments that have been happening all over our city. And sometimes there's some activity and some concerning behaviors that happen around the jail. So some additional security cameras, upgrades would be very helpful. And then, as I mentioned, the diverse workforce that we've hired, and we've hired them in a cohort, which is really helpful. But the correction officers not only have to have good English language skills, many of our new correction officers, English is their second or third language. They also have to have really good writing skills. So we need to provide a bit of additional support so that they can be successful and stay, and we can retain the correction officers that we've invested in. So those are some of the things we will be working on in the coming year. And I welcome any questions, and I have lots of people here that can help me answer them if they're too tricky for me.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
I have a question.
Sure.
Any questions?
Patty has a question.
Thank you for the presentation and the report, Colleen. So on the report, it lists 6 people, including yourself, so do you have to have a quorum if you've lost some folks? Are you down to 3 now or 4 now? What is the?
We're down to 4 now. One of our members had some health issues and had to resign, and another one moved to the Lewiston area, and the travel was a bit much.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of recruiting.
Okay, are you bound by a quorum or not necessarily?
I don't believe we're bound by
I
a
don't think so.
quorum.
Okay, great, okay, good to know, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Commissioner.
Okay. The next issue, I guess, is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda 24, 46 through 53?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wood.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jameson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Under new business, substantial amendment to the Cumberland County City of Portland Home Consortium's action plan, public hearing, and a final read. So there was a presentation in my absence, I guess, last time, and as usual, the commission has full copies of the rather detailed and well-done report. We would now,
Can I jump in?
sure, go ahead.
This item was first brought up in April 8th meeting. It was opened up for a public hearing and closed, and the commissioners took a vote. However, when we went back to look at the video, because of a hole within the minutes that we were creating, we found that there was no motion second. And so we brought back this item at the recommendation of legal counsel for the commissioners to bring it back and just make it clean that, in a sense, you bring this back to when you would make the motion. And the motion would be just motion to ratify the action. That would allow all 5 of you to vote on it this evening, even though there was only 3 of you back in April. The vote, coincidentally enough, was 3-0 that evening. So, but if someone wanted to make a statement saying motion to ratify the action, and then a second, and then a vote, we can be on the right tracks on this item.
So
Clear.
I would entertain a motion to ratify the previous action on 24-041 being the motion that was voted upon but not made at the last meeting. So this is, as they say in the legislative world, this is nunc pro tunc for last month. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And so now, could I have a motion to pull the minutes off of the table, please?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Could we now have a vote on the minutes themselves? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of last month?
I think you'd have to amend the minutes first
Right.
and incorporate the vote that you just took.
Oh, well, we did, I did mean to do that, sure. So, motion please to amend the minutes as proposed tonight to include the nunc pro tunc motion that was just approved.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. And so now I would like a motion to approve the minutes.
Move.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And so now,
Thank you all for going through that process.
we now will have a public hearing and following that, a final read and motion on adoption. Were you gonna make a presentation tonight or just?
All right,
This is
just,
the annual action
Right.
plan.
okay, for
Right.
the annual action plan, great. Just wanted to make sure that I'm on the right one, thank you. Kristen Stiles, Community Development Director. Courtney presented last month to you at the April meeting for our annual action plan, so I won't read through the whole thing again, but I did want to point out a few minor changes that have happened since the April meeting. As you all know, our annual action plan is submitted to HUD every May, once a year, and it lays out what we plan to do with our CDBG funds and our home partnership funds. At the April meeting, HUD had not yet released the 2024 the 2024 allocation, and since then they released it last Wednesday. So there are a few minor changes. Our allocation went up by $8,600, which is quite minor. But what's a little bit interesting is either our allocation goes up and the City of Portland's allocation goes up, This year it flipped, which means that our two set-aside communities, which are tied to to Portland, went down just a little bit. So I guess that's my little bit long-winded way of saying that the county's allocation went up, but the city of Portland's allocation went down, so our set-aside communities went down a little bit. If you look at the summary sheet in the back of your packet, it looks very similar to the April meeting. Most of them changed very, very small amount, if not none at all, because the size of our change was only $8,000. Where there is a big change is for our home partnership program. Overall, the city of Portland and Cumberland County share these funds in our home partnership program, and it went down by $141,000, which is quite substantial. We can't quite figure out how HUD comes up with this formula, how we went up for CDBG but down so much for home. But that does mean that for the home program, it's $76,000 less that we have than when we presented at the April meeting. For the home program, unlike our CDBG program, we don't release applications until after we have the final dollar amount. The reason that we do this is because all of the home funds go directly to the creation of affordable housing, so it doesn't really make sense until we can let developers know exactly how much funds are available for that program. Now that we have our final allocation, our plan is to turn this around and submit it to HUD as soon as possible. We have 60 days from last Wednesday. Our goal is to do it by Friday because everything is set and should be ready to go. And if we do that fast enough, then HUD should be able to turn it around so there won't be a delay in starting the program July 1st.
Okay, any questions? Thank you very much, Kristen.
Thank you.
So, we have a motion then, please, for approval of 24041 on final enactment.
If we could go with a more formal motion on this, because it is going to HUD, and that action would be authorize myself, James Gailey, county manager, to execute all required certifications, applications, and documents in conjunction with the submittal of the 2024 Consolidated Annual Action Plan.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Congratulations once again.
Hearing, yeah. Right.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry. Any members of the public who wish to speak concerning this matter? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. And we now reaffirm the motion just passed. All those in favor of reaffirming the motion just passed, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. And we need a motion on 24043. Does that also have specific requirements, Mr.?
That was the
Gailey?
24.
That was.
That was 24043, sorry.
And 24050, I will ask to postpone this item to, is it the June 13th meeting? June 10th meeting. Mike, the general manager at the arena, had to attend to a family emergency out of state and was unable to attend this evening's meeting.
Can I have a motion to table this to the next meeting?
So move.
I'll second.
All those, non-debatable, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
It's unanimous. And the last item was the amendment of the non-union personnel policy. And then ask Mr. Gailey or whoever else will be the guilty party.
Thank you. This is an item that the staff have been working on for quite some time. We actually got a number of policies from municipalities that have retire, rehire policies in place to use as a guide. And it was really the need for for such a policy was the ever-changing world up at Maine PERS. And different laws and guidelines that they seem to be updating or changing annually that impacts retiree and rehire positions. And so, in fairness to the employees of Cumberland County, we felt as though we needed to have some guidelines within our personnel policy that employees could refer to so that they know what to expect if they are getting close to a possible rehire situation. So I'd like to ask Amy Jennings, HR Director, to take the commissioners through this policy. This policy has been worked on for over the last 3-4 months, and we just finished it within the last day or so. So I appreciate the opportunity to get this out to you just prior to the meeting. But Amy, would you like to go through it?
Good evening. I'm just going to point out, you have a copy of the policy in front of you. I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of this policy. This policy applies to non-union employees who've met the terms under Maine PERS and are eligible for retirement under Maine PERS. And for the purpose of this policy, employees who retire and are rehired by the county after they begin collecting Maine PERS will be considered a retire-rehire employee. Currently, the way it's set up, we are unable to have any discussions prior to going from a retiree to a rehire. This policy will allow to have those discussions, pre-planned discussions, so the transition from a normal employee to a retiree is more fluid, and we'll be able to discuss their return to work, and they're not subjected to a waiting period to be rehired by this policy. The eligibility requirements would include, it must be a regular benefits eligible position within the county. The employee is not a member of the bargaining unit. The employee receives a positive recommendation from the department manager and county manager to retire and to be rehired. The employee is enrolled in Maine PERS retirement plan and is qualified for normal retirement under the plan. The employee's position is still required by the county, and it is not slated for elimination. And the employee is still able to perform the essential functions of the position with or without accommodation. And lastly, the employee has no significant history of disciplinary issues or suspension. The term of the rehire, upon rehire, the employee will be treated as a new hire with respect to seniority and all other benefits. Employees who are retired and rehired after April 1st are eligible for a return to work, a retire-rehire period for 3 years, for a maximum of 3 years. At the end of that 3 years, we can have a discussion to extend that by an additional 3 years. They must work a minimum of 30 hours so that they're a full-time employee we're rehiring. And then lastly, the contribution rate currently is a 5% at the time of the adoption of this policy, which means when someone retires and rehired, there's a 5% penalty that the county will pay for. After that, should that increase, and that's currently what we do with our retiree rehires now, if there is an increase of that 5%, that responsibility will be on the employee, not the county. And lastly, and this again is what we do with our current retiree rehires, they may elect to enroll in a 457 Mission Square retirement plan, and we will match up to 3% of that contribution. Any questions? Yeah.
I do, Amy.
Oh.
Amy, the 5%, is that ongoing,
Yes.
or it's not a one-time?
No, it's ongoing.
Okay.
Yes, Ben?
When, on letter B of the rehire, terms of rehire, someone can work an additional 3 years. Is that a contiguous 3 years? Can they come for a year and then they're out on leave or something, and then then they're eventually 3 years?
It's a
Is it-
continuous, our thought, it's a continuous 3 years.
Okay,
Now,
conti-
if there's a family medical leave or things that we can't anticipate, obviously, we would look into that.
But
But
it's-
this would be a 3-year continuous.
Continuous, okay. And then when they get to that 3 years, let's say they negotiate, they want to stay another 3 years, is that the finality of it all in terms of, I mean, I don't know how old this person may be, but they might retire early, so I don't want to make any assumptions. So after 6 years total, let's just say this person really loves working here, which is great. After 6 years, would they then not be able to work a 7th year, or is this kind of,
Our thought at this time is at 6.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't amend that
okay,
in the future.
great. I personally think it's a great policy, because I think having a flexible policy like this is super important to any organization that's trying to hire good people, retaining their knowledge, allowing us and both that employee to be flexible during a time where we may really need that person's internal knowledge before they do retire. It makes a lot of sense. And so I'm glad we have this very clear-cut policy, and it seems fair, and it seems generous. And I applaud you for the effort. Oh, one last question, too.
Yes.
I know that you surveyed other towns and municipalities. I'm trying not to squint at you, Amy, but I can't see very well. That you looked at other towns and municipalities. Did this pass a legal review of any sort?
I ran it past our attorney, yes.
Awesome, super, thank you.
Any other questions?
No? Looks good to me.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion on this item? Public hearing, anybody wish to speak on this item? Seeing none?
I'd like to make a motion for 24051 for the amendment of the non-union personnel policy incorporating retiree return to work effective April 1st, 2024.
Can I ask a question first?
Second.
Now you can, sure.
How, the, our status of the, our pay scale, would that stay the same? Or is that negotiable?
Well, they lose all their seniority, so it
Okay,
kind of, it's a discussion that we would have.
okay. So it's not an automatic, say for talk's sake, if I'm making $100 an hour, that I would be rehired at that $100 an hour?
Not necessarily.
Okay. So it's all up for discussion then, as far as, oh, it's like a new hire, okay, gotcha. I just wanted to make that well clear, so I understood it, okay. That was my only question, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions, issues?
Well, wait a minute. Does that also consider benefits? Vacation time and da-da-da-da?
They would,
It would be a new hire.
New hire, negotiated.
So just to clarify, the status of new hire means that they would not necessarily be entry level in terms of whatever the package is, but it would be a mutually agreed package. Is that the idea?
Wouldn't it depend on the position, right?
Depends on
It
the
could.
position, it certainly depends on the candidate and what they bring.
Yep.
There's some seniority, expertise, education, on where they fall in the pay plan.
And that's established at the time of rehire or new hire or whatever it is. Yeah. All right, any other questions, comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? We have concluded, we have met most of our agenda. Now we would ask for update comments from the county manager.
Thank you. Got a couple this evening. First of all, I want to extend a big congratulations to Communications Director Melinda Fairbrother-Dyer. Just last week, she attended the Maine National Emergency Number Association annual conference that was held in South Portland. And surprise to herself, she was nominated and received the 2023 Director of the Year award. And so I just want to recognize her publicly for this accomplishment. And for the last year that she's had with a dispatch center that has been completely gutted and rebuilt, and all the work that she's doing on getting a new radio system, as well as filling all the vacancies that they've had over the last 12 to 18 months. She has done a fantastic job. for that communication center. And they're running on all cylinders right now. So it's great that she received this. Another item I had was just to let the commissioners know that this morning, Sandy Warren, the compliance and audit manager that is overseeing the opera funds, she has sent out a notification to not only internal staff who may have opera funds for projects, but also subrecipients on the outside of the county, just giving them some timelines and deadlines coming up. As the commissioners are aware, over the last couple of months, I've been informing you that 2024, the end of, is a hard deadline for us to allocate funding that is a go. And when I say a go, that means these projects are not going to languish. They're going to get going. They need to be under contract, and there is a strong intent to finish them by 2026. We have pinpointed a number of areas that we have opera funds currently that we don't know if they're going to fulfill that. And so we will be working with those subrecipients over the next 45 to 60 days and probably be bringing back some recommendations for the commissioners to reallocate funding to assure ourselves that we have strong projects moving forward. Because if we don't, and projects languish and are not able to spend the money, we will lose the money.
Right.
And that's the last thing we want, is to lose money. So there's going to be quite a bit of process that unfolds over the next number of months on this. But I just wanted to give you all a heads up that the first letter went out via email to the subrecipients. A couple of projects worth noting. The jail medical wing has started construction. They've started to peel the soil away from the building and start stockpiling it for contamination remediation. So that is underway. And later this week and beginning of next week, we will begin some of the concrete work over at the Cross Insurance Arena as we work towards a July installation of new dasher boards and glass, which will flip the benches from one side of the arena to the other side, with the penalty boxes being vice versa. This is a project that's been going on for quite some time, and it's nice that we're within distance of it becoming reality. Lastly, I want to bring to your attention, in the Press Herald this afternoon, an article was posted about how communities and counties are spending their opioid settlement funds. And I will be perfectly honest with you, I read down through 3/4 of the article saying, geez, they haven't even mentioned Cumberland County yet. And we're doing some good work with our funding. But the latter half of the article really gives a lot of recognition to Cumberland County and particularly the Public Health Office that's overseeing those funds and the good work that they're doing in allocating those funds for the benefit of Cumberland County. So with that, I conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. The executive staff,
Could I ask the manager?
sure, go ahead.
Jim, you get back to opera. Are there any projects in our mind here that are in question as far as getting, I mean, I'm not asking for the name, I'm just saying.
Yes,
There are, okay.
not necessarily under the county umbrella.
Okay.
It's more external subrecipients.
Alex?
I just have one of the ARPA pieces left. 27 Northport is finishing up design phase right now. Hopefully for the next meeting, we'll be able to show folks some more looks at the drawings on it that are necessary to get it out for GC bids. So getting close there on that particular one. And on an emergency basis, we actually held our first couple of meetings there. And so that was a good wake up to.
It's official.
It's official. That's all I've got for now.
Teresa?
I'll be missing the next commissioners meeting because I'll be at the National GFOA conference in Florida, and and they've got some really good sessions scheduled for that, so that's exciting. The end of the year is also coming fast to wrap up, and so scheduling auditors and packing up, making some room for the file. So those are things that are coming right up faster than I'll know it, so.
I was hoping you were gonna say we had more money than we ever thought possible.
I have one comment, it relates to her area. The way the law is set up in Maine now, the costs of running the jail and their budgets for the counties, we've got to have it by the end of July for the next year, so that we can submit it to DOC and they can get it into the governor's budget. So I put that out and make sure that we can,
So
that's.
that would be for the fiscal year starting in July 1,
Yeah.
25.
Yeah.
That's quite often with the state, yeah. You gotta think, sometimes you have to think 3 years in advance.
Yeah, that's right.
How's that crystal ball?
Not good.
I'm gonna say, probably a little foggy
Well,
right
you mark it
now.
up 20%.
Well-
You do what you think you should, and then you mark it up.
And the other thing, we did get, the jails did get approximately, all the jails got approximately $4 million to be split up by, I think, the formula. That's, at least that's the way it's coming forward. But it's a one-time. So if you're putting that into the mix, make sure that when you do your budget, that you take it out so that it's what you need, that kind of support. And what we'll really be looking for is that and an estimate of the next year so that we can put something in for the biennium.
Thank you.
Amy?
Like Jim had mentioned, we're in the process of upgrading our non-union personnel policy. And that's just making some changes that have evolved since the last time that we put it into place. Some editing, some updating required by law, and we'll be presenting that, our hopes, in June, at the June Commissioners meeting.
Jeff Joyce?
Good evening. So we just had 10 people graduate from the Corrections Academy last week. There are 3 that have to go back and take a test, so we're working on that. That kind of goes into what Colleen was talking about as far as English being a second language. You know, they can speak English, but sometimes the reading comprehension is a little problematic. So we've been doing tutoring sessions all last week, and I think midweek they'll go back and take the test. So, you know, we had 5 the last time. I think we still are at like 3 because we lost 2 people. One just couldn't cut it when he came back 2 weeks into it, and then the other one was somebody through attrition and stuff. So we have 4 set up for July. And you know, the board is looking good, but they won't go until July, so we're going to try to do a hybrid academy to get them on the floor as much as possible before they go, so that we get some use out of those folks as well. The population, the inmate population has grown. 245, God, I wish it was 245, like Colleen said. It's hovering around 300, 310. So. Police departments are out there making arrests and stuff, and you know, been working with the judges and the DA's office to see if we can get some of these folks that are kind of lingering on low bails out, so that they're not lingering or vanquishing in there. The population is, I've never seen it as bad as it is as far as illness. At one point in late March, early April, we were actually running 3 hospital details at the same time. That means you got 2 people per inmate, 24 hours a day. The staff has been phenomenal. A shout out to Scarborough PD. Scarborough has been unbelievable about helping with covering the hospital details. The law enforcement group has been helping with that too. So we've been able to manage through it, but we're starting to see a lot of illness come through because these folks don't take care of themselves. And about the only time they see a doctor is when they come into the jail, and get their physical or get their medical physical to get in, and then we refer them. So a little challenging there. Captain Costello retired after probably almost 40 years of collective corrections tenure. So we're looking both inside and outside and nationally for a captain that knows corrections so that we can replace him. Law enforcement, we've had a couple of, or at least one individual that went to the warden service, so that was a huge loss. He had a great dog. Hasn't been with us long, but good for him, bad for us. We'll have to replace him. So we're still plugging along with hiring for law enforcement. The contracts will be starting the end of the month. Speaking to the town of Casco tomorrow night because they're kicking the tires on a contract. It sounds like Standish is pretty much going to go with an 8th contract deputy. And it looks like there's rumor that, keep in mind, the K-9 that the deputy that left was a Standish contract deputy, and it was a Standish contract dog. So they're looking at potentially replacing that again. So I guess they didn't get knocked down by the fact that, you know, the dog they purchased a couple years ago went to the warden service. They still want another dog. So, you know, with that, our K-9 teams, we had 4, 1 for Standish and then the 3. One individual gave up his K-9. It's about 3 years from the end. Each K-9 is about 8 years, but he had a new child and his heart wasn't in it, and it never turns out good to force somebody to stay with something, and family comes first, so we lost the K-9 there, and so we got 2 K-9s right now, very good K-9s, so we've gone from 4 down to 2, and we're making it work. So that's really it in a nutshell at this point. Any questions?
Any questions?
I got a comment. Sheriff, I didn't mean to leave you out of the conversation about the budget.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, no,
It's fine.
we-
I don't disagree with anything you said.
I know, but we need also need your thinking as to some of the costs also.
You know, I tell people that it was easier to manage the costs before COVID and before we started losing all of these positions than it is now. I mean, you can watch the lines on the food and the cleaning products and stuff, but, you know, really, it's kind of a mess when you start looking at the salaries and the overtime, because you plug in holes and stuff. But you're correct. I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, I mentioned it today with the Board of Visitors. There are a lot of things that the legislators are doing without asking, how does that affect you? You know, I'm going to mention at the main sheriff's that it's really taken us from having a lot of people, because volunteerism's down too. I mean, you can't get volunteers in a post-COVID world as much as you used to. So it's really made it hard. And to see people go from the Board of Visitors. You know, another thing that's out there, I haven't looked at the law, but it's kind of out there, is the court holding. All of a sudden, court holding is problematic for defense attorneys. If you recall, about 2015, that was all redone. I don't know who was involved in the, you know, making basically the Sally Port an additional holding area, but that's what we were trying to do, is get numbers. There was a bill that just came out, and I keep intending to read it, but I haven't seen it, but I guess it requires attorney-client privilege to be beyond what the Constitution says. They don't feel some attorneys going in and meeting with an inmate inside a holding cell is in their best interest. We've been doing it since 2015. I've seen attorneys go in and make it work. Sometimes they'll take them out of there and put them in the docket in the courtroom and make it happen. But there have been a couple of attorneys that have kind of waved the flag. I've been going back and forth with them. My understanding is that the state has no interest in building out or rehabbing the court holding, but all of a sudden in 2024, there are a couple of attorneys, lawyers of the day, that are really having a problem with how we're set up there. I can tell you that in meeting with the judges, the district attorneys, and I know this for a fact because we probably got the best transport division in the state, they've been trying to jump through every hurdle possible to make sure that the attorneys get time with their client so that we uphold the attorney-client privilege. And I've received compliments from judges and the DAs, you know. But again, the Defense Association is kind of put out there. I think, Commissioner Gordon, you'll probably see that in the corrections meeting. I don't know what else we can do. The judges seem to be in tune with, that's the best we've got. I'm skeptical. I mean, one thing we saw with COVID is that people found out they can do a lot of things on virtual, and maybe that's a way to not get into the courthouse, do it virtually, so that you don't have to come down here. I don't know, but just know if you hear it, the Sergeant of Transports is doing the best he can. He's got the support of the judges and the prosecutors, and most defense attorneys, but it's out there, so now you know.
Okay, anything else?
And I can add on that, we have been in discussions with, off and on discussions with the facilities people for the judicial side of the house. And they have floated a number of different alternatives to provide that attorney-client, inmate conversation, confidentiality area. Last I saw, they were looking at reducing the size of courtroom 1 and building some things along one wall of courtroom 1 to provide some kind of more privacy when an attorney of the day meets up with their client. So the dialogue is going, but it seems like it's going very slow.
Yeah, and I would say that, with the exception of 2 people that I know of, hearing from my staff, everybody else is kind of working with it, and it really has been. I mean, you know, I've seen since 2015 people in the actual holding cell meeting with their people and stuff. And I mean, we have to make sure everything is secure. We can't have escapes and stuff like that. So it's really a delicate balance. But I'm convinced that our transport staff are doing the absolute best they can to make sure that that part of the Constitution is honored. So.
In the rest of the state, Zoom is very much in use.
It is. And I will say, I mean, until I sat on a committee about 10 years ago, I kind of thought that Zoom was the best way. But unfortunately, there's some cases, let's face it, the judges kind of like to see people. I don't blame them, I do too. The Zoom meetings are just, they get old after a while. They want to see the client. But also, there's some cases where it really doesn't make sense to be on Zoom. They actually have to be physically in the courtroom. So it became relatively apparent that we wouldn't save anything. It would really actually cost us more bodies because we'd be sending, let's say if we got 44 people coming up to court for today, if 10 had to stay back and have a hearing at the jail and the other 34 came up here, well, now I've got to hold some people back to actually run the court in the jail because we're not set up for court, first of all. Secondly, is the judges don't want noise, so we would have to be constantly running to get people. We'd have to be scanning in the attorneys to come in and meet with their people and stuff. So it becomes a little bit more labor intensive for us to do a virtual one. And if we have to do both, it's real complicated. So we're only about 4 miles away, and we got a big bus, and it seems to be work for everybody, but with the exception of a couple of defense attorneys.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Dongalay, anything? And Catherine? Nothing. Okay. Commissioners, Commissioner Smith? any
I've
comments?
attended a couple of the CCEA, I guess, what the acronym is, Cumberland County Extensions, meetings over the past couple of months. They're very busy getting ready for 4-H season and gardening and all the programs that they do. The Cumberland County Fair, when they get ready for that in the fall. So it's a very vibrant group. They're looking at their budgets are still a little bit on hold with one of their assistants in the office, which I guess is a humane thing, which has nothing to do with us really necessarily. But they're doing great work, and I think they're well positioned to have a great spring and summer ahead. The only other thing I would mention is May tends to be the road safety month for folks who are biking to work or walking to work, motorcycles out on the road. It's getting to be that time of year where it's really important to be aware of who's on the road and what's going on. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention, just to be safe on the roadways. Thank you.
Commissioner Dennison?
Yeah, just briefly, in that light, following up Commissioner Smith, sports and activities are in full scale in high schools, middle schools, and some younger levels. So be conscious of that and get out there and also support your teams in your respective towns. It's a very busy, crazy time of year for families, but also increases activities on roads, et cetera, especially for younger kids. So let's just be careful about that. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Wayne, Thomas?
Well, the only thing that I have this evening is, I'd like to bring it to the Commissioner's attention that this afternoon at 2:47 is I received a letter from a GP-COG telling them that the nomination committee wanted to replace my position with an elected position is on with the GP-COG board. For as long as I can remember, and I've been on this board, the county has always had a seat at the table as an executive of a member for with GP-COG. Well, with this year, because my term, comes to an end, it is actually at the end of May, because would they go off, for the summer, so it would start. So I notified them, that I wouldn't be coming forth again because, my term ends in December. Well, with the nomination or committee, we now wants to put, instead of a county elected person on that board, and get people from, with the participating our counties, and they were brought forth what to add, was Yarmouth and with North Yarmouth to the executive committee. So that means that the county will not have a seat at the GP-COG, our board, and the county pays about between $10,000 and $11,000 a year. But would they hope, that we will stay on the committee and we will have our vote, but we won't have a seat at the table. So the input that I get as an executive on the county is very little. So with the input that we're going to continue to get, if the county stays as a member, it's probably going to be even less than what I got as. So with the decision would have to be made, because it's already in with the budget, do we want to continue to pay the $11,000 a year and not have a seat at the board, but only be a member of with GP-COG, but we do not receive any of their services. So, my recommendation, to the board would be that we don't, continue on with the GP-COG board. But I'm only one of 5, so.
Okay. Anything else?
So,
Discussion about that?
do
No.
we have,
Okay.
okay.
We put next month, and we could ask them to
We
address it if we
put that,
want to.
so, can we ask with Jim, to look into that, or do you just want to stay out of it and we put it on for next month?
I can look into it if you like.
And
Okay.
if it ends up being something that needs to be on the agenda, we would like a direct response from somebody there.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, yep. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, well, that's it.
Commissioner Gordon?
I really don't have anything.
Having in mind the comments from Commissioner Smith and Jameson about the turn of the season, I do feel like I need to point out that there's an awful lot of people all of a sudden who seem to be bicycling. And there's a suspicious ability to go up a hill without pedaling, which makes me think that we're talking about the e-bikes that have become more and more common, and so as yet a third or a fourth style of moving vehicle, I would hope everybody would have an extra eye out for the traveling lanes to the right in the sidewalks. The only other thing I have has to do with sports, and I was able and pleased to attend the Special Olympics regional Olympics event, which was held at Bonnie Eagles complex, which is a massive complex, and has all kinds of opportunities for sport. And frankly, every town in the county pretty much was represented one way or another, although it was a little disappointing that some of the cities did not seem to have participation through their educational programs in schools. But there were literally many hundreds of participants at the event, which lasted more than a half a day, and there were events going on the whole time for hundreds of participants. So the next turn of the wheel involves the state 3-day event at the University of Maine Orono, which happens in June, and that will be it for the season, I suppose, certainly for track and field and that kind of thing. And I guess I would say I would encourage the schools that have not made it their business to try to make that an annual event. They would join a large group that already has. And also there are agencies that provide what they call Dayhab, which is programming and life support for residents who are older than school age. And those programs vary. A large number of them participated, but a substantial number that are well known in the community did not. So I'd encourage them to make it their business to examine their opportunities there. So, and that's what I have. So unless there's further business to be heard, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So we adjourn, do we go into executive session?
We adjourn, and then we'll have
We're gonna have a
a
workshop.
Workshop and then
and
executive session
session as
afterwards.
part of the workshop.
Okay, very good. So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, thirded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, we're adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Oh, we can leave now?
And
Can we leave now?
next,
Right there, Alex.
Wow.
I'm not surprised.
Nope. That's,
I don't know why I gave this.
I don't think we're recording the workshop, are we?
No.
I don't know why I gave that stupid.
I believe we are recording. If you don't, we can cut it.
No, I don't have an issue.
I don't have any preference either way.
I just as soon set our people free, unless, I don't know of any reason to record it
You
unless.
need it, Jim, for anything? No? No.
Okay.
I think it's public information, right, for people to know?
Yeah?
Okay. So the preference is, let them go home or keep them on to a report? It doesn't matter to me.
I'd keep them on. What? What?
I would keep it going.
Keep it going.
I'd keep it going.
All right, so the topic is, workshop topic has to do with vehicles. And we have a presentation of sorts. Who's gonna make that presentation? The emergency vehicles presentation.
That'd be me.
You're the guilty party?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
We have it up on side screen right now. The camera is doing its usual thing of deciding not to turn on when we need it to turn on.
Actually, I think I solved it last time.
Got my papers wrapped.
Oh, you made it go something.
It's making some
Turn it
noise.
on, yeah.
I'm always asked, like, why do you not have projectors in meeting rooms? This is why.
work off you, Adam?
Yep, just give me a nod.
All right, yeah, go to, so, just so you guys are aware, I was asked to maybe do some research, kind of get everyone up to speed in regards to our emergency vehicles. I know that when you drive around the campus, there appears to be a lot of vehicles sitting there. Well, that tends to happen when you got 4, 5, 6, 7 openings. That means that there's 7 cars that we don't have people in actually driving them every day because they're open slots. But we also have spare vehicles that we need, that we use periodically as well. And I just figured I'd give you guys a little rehash of what's happened over the last few years, so, okay. So basically, to look at our staff, we need vehicles for 6 administrative folks, 9 detectives, 11 supervisors, 22 general revenue deputies, 17 contract deputies, and 1 court officer. So ends up being a total of 66 vehicles based on those numbers. General revenue deputies, obviously, are the folks who just work Cumberland County, out there in the towns that don't have their own police department. The contract deputies are all the contract towns that pay for the extra funding. They actually buy their own vehicles. Each town buys a vehicle. So we're really looking, as far as the county goes, we need to supply the 22, 11, 9, and the 6, and the 1 court officer. So, yes, the next one, please. All right, a little bit repetitive here, but also that we also keep a couple vehicles for our training department. What happens with that is, whether you're from the jail, mostly it is from the jail, but there's a few folks there don't work in the jail, that if they're required to attend training, like at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, we allow them to take a vehicle up to the academy. Might be a day training, might be a week's training. We let them use those vehicles as a means of getting up there and back. We also let them use those vehicles to attend a local conference somewhere in New England, etc. Like I said, we do have 1 vehicle assigned to the court officer. That vehicle is parked at the LEC. That court officer basically travels to the 3 courts that we have in Cumberland County. So it's basically up here, Portland District Court, Richland Court, and West Bath District Court. So those are the 3 locations he may have to travel to throughout the week. We do have 6 patrol spare emergency vehicles. 1 of those being a K-9 car. What we found out quite a few years ago, but not that long ago, is when a K-9 car breaks down and you're still trying to make your K-9 operation operational, that the dog in the back seat of a car doesn't do any good. So it tends to chew up the seat, things like that. So it's been beneficial for us to keep a extra K-9 spare vehicle. Recently, one of the officers with a K-9, he actually had a transmission replaced in his vehicle and he had to jump into that for a period of time. As well, the CID spare vehicles, as you guys may or may not know, CID usually, they run unmarked cars. They do have some sort of blue lighting, but mostly used to respond to a scene. We don't allow them to use them on regular patrol shifts. So if they come out to work a patrol, they won't be using their CID vehicle. They jump into one of those spare emergency vehicles, which is all lit up, it's all striped up, it's got the light on the top, etc. We feel that it's important for the safety of them, and it also waves the flag for the county, so that when people see a cruiser out driving around, they, hey, there's the deputy sheriff in the county. So. But when you start looking at the numbers there, put them all together, that totals 75 vehicles. Okay, thank you. I looked at
But before you go off that,
yes.
you go back to that.
Yeah, sure.
Out of those categories,
Yes.
which one of those which one of those categories take vehicles home at night?
So, all these people take vehicle home at night, and all the CID folks take a vehicle at night. The only people that do not take a vehicle home is the court officer, and the 2 training vehicles stay there as well.
And then obviously you have the spare vehicles that sit down in the lot there available in case someone needs it, and then they have to make the way to pull in and jump into an action. So all these folks do take a vehicle on.
Can I ask a question? I don't want to
Yes.
interrupt your flow, but, so it says 9 detective vehicles up there?
Yeah.
Do we have 9 detectives?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually have more than that, believe it or not.
Okay.
One of the detectives is actually part of the contract. She works up here in the DA's office.
Okay.
And then we also have a MDEA position, believe it or not, with the state. So that's a detective, and he gets his vehicle from the state, so that's not included.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else?
Not right now, thank you.
All right, so when I was looking at this, you know, I wanted to jump back to, you know, where I started. I started about 2020. And at that point in time, 2020, the budget was already passed, and at that time, we were looking at Tahoes. Back in 2012, we actually started purchasing Tahoes for the sheriff's office patrol, and we've done that for numerous years, obviously, with the idea in 2020 we're gonna do it as well. But what occurred was, General Motors started retooling their plan. They want to change the way the Tahoe looked. So they actually didn't build a police package Tahoe in 2020. So at that point in time, we had to move to Ford Explorers, at the Interceptor Explorer utility. So at that point in time, we jumped to the Ford Explorers. Obviously, in 2020, what we would do is we'd order the cars in March and get RFP sent out, figure out what the pricing is, let them know that, hey, come July, we're probably gonna have a car here and a car there. But we'd give people an idea, all right, we're gonna order cars in March. And they'd have a good idea how many cars we're looking at. And we'd get a delivery of October 2020, the same year. Next slide, please. In 2021, as you guys know, COVID hit. That really kind of messed things up a little bit for us. During this year, as you know, some of the plants shut down, people didn't show up to work. You know, there's just mass issue. So our 2021 cars that we used to get with that budget, it took actually 12 months to deliver those cars. We did once again go with Fords because the Chevy was brand new, and we were like, well, you know, I don't want to buy a brand new Chevy, we want to make sure they get all the perks out of it. So we decided to go with Fords. But as you can see, we ordered the cars in 2021, but we didn't receive them until March 2022. So it took 12 months, but normally it would take 6, 7 months at the tops, which has caused us in the fleet to get a little older as time's moved on, for no other reason other than you order a car and they're not delivering it. So, next slide, please. 2022 came. So we're still dealing with the COVID. These plants, obviously, some, you know, they haven't, people show up to work, some people aren't showing up to work. This particular year was a little bit of an issue where routinely we sent out our RFP for the local, for folks to bid on. Lowest bid got the quote, happened to be Augusta Quirk or Augusta Ford, Quirk Augusta, whatever you want to call it. We've done business with them for years, always been very good to deal with. So in March, they quoted us these prices with the idea that, okay, great, we got these cars coming. Says April, March, April, that time frame. Come October, my contact up at Quirk basically calls me and says, hey, I got bad news. I can't fulfill that order. Ford's not sending us any cars. So at that point in time, it's like, uh-oh, we're in big trouble. We got a year here. We've already been kind of waiting 6 months for our cars to come in. Now we're gonna find another vendor. During that period of time, I had contacted MHQ. I worked with our fleet supervisor. We reached out to them. They actually had, MHQ's in Massachusetts, by the way. They had cars on the lot down there. They ordered extra cars. And thank God, we were able to get the cars we were looking for. With the exception of one CID car. We did not get the CID car. I think mostly for the aspect that the the price was increased obviously by $1444.95. But beggars can't be choosers on those cars. And, you know, we end up able to get 8 patrol vehicles, but we did lose a CID administrative car that particular year. Another note would be, so we actually ordered them in 2022. I say 18 months with the idea that we actually ordered them like March, and then Perk tells us, oh yeah, we can't fulfill the order 6 months later, then another year later, we finally get our car. So it ended up being September 2023. And that's when we received our last batch of cars, all being Fords. Next slide, please. So, basically the 2023, 2024 year was a little bit different because, as you guys know, we went from a calendar year to a fiscal year. So we had a little bit of a mistake, you know, we'll eat this, with the idea that normally in a year, we order 8 cars and 1 CID car. Well, when we messed up, we moved the budgetary, we went from a year to 18 months. What we should have done is ordered more cars, but we did not order more cars. We ordered our standard 8 1 CID vehicle, and which means we actually short ourselves out at least 4 cars, because usually we get, or 4.5 cars, usually we get 9 cars a year. So with that 1.5 year budget, we short ourselves at least 4 vehicles. As it stands, we just basically got our first 3 vehicles on May 1st of this batch of vehicles here. Next slide, please. 2024, the budget season came for this year, as you guys know. Prior to sitting down with the sheriff, you know, I tried to call around to see where the price of cars were gonna be. But this is the first year we really started looking at some of the usage for some of our cars, because what we're seeing is the Fords are working out pretty good and they're a good car, but they're not a good car for everyone within the department. The actual size of the car does matter, particularly if you're on a dive team, or if you're on the TAC team, or if you're doing both of those, because you're carrying a lot of equipment. But this year came, I made some calls to people that I dealt with, and they gave me these estimates of where the cars will be approximately. You gotta remember that I was making those calls in October 2023. We're in March now, and you know, as it stands, I haven't even got an RFP out yet to see where those cars are gonna fall, because I have no idea what the pricing is, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get cars still. Because
Kerry, is that price unfitted? The
this is unfitted, that's just for the.
So you add another 17 grand
You're gonna
plus
get
on top of that?
17.5, probably even 18.5 to 20 grand now.
Thank you.
The cost of that equipment keeps going up. But anyways, the point I'm taking is I actually recommended those numbers. The Chevy vehicles at $57,000 each. There's a couple reasons I did that. Number one, the town of Standish is a contract. They're up for a couple vehicles. The town manager reached out to me. There was some concerns. They get some larger individuals that have to drive the cars over there, and she loves her guys. She loves the guys and girls that work over there, and she wants to take care of them. So she's like, you know, if it costs an extra 10 grand, I want to buy Chevy vehicles for these people to make sure that they stay in town. I like my police service guys, and I want to keep them. So in looking at that, that's one reason I quoted out, but also the aspect that we have some people that have just a lot of equipment and a lot of gear, and these smaller Fords tend to get overloaded a little bit, and we're having some issues and complaints in regards to, you know, there's just too much equipment, not enough room to store it all. So, next slide, please. So like I said earlier, basically you got 34 general revenue patrol deputies. That includes everyone, you know, right up through as far as supervisors and deputies. We have contracts with towns. In the contract, it's specific that every 4 years or every 120,000 miles, you know, we're gonna replace the vehicle, because if we didn't put that in the contract, we'd have towns that say, well, you know, this vehicle's fine, it's 8 years old, it still looks good, we're gonna run it. So we had to put that in the contract years ago. These are the contracts that we hold the towns to. Like I said, when you add the CID admin, I put them down here because really those are the unmarked vehicles.
120.
There's 11 CID and the 6 admin, which is 17 people. So realistically, if we were to buy a vehicle for each one of them every 5 years, you almost need to be buying 3 of them a year. And 3 times 5 is 15, and that's how you get to that number. But that's the recommendation I would make as we move forward. So, next slide, please. I just wanted to touch on that we started receiving our 2023 vehicles May 1st. We haven't gotten them all yet, we just got 3. Next slide, please. I think I already talked about this a little bit, sorry about that. Trying to organize it for you, give you a little time order, time arrive. Next slide, please. All right, this gets down to the nitty-gritty. I know that some people are wondering, okay, where are these cars going, things of that nature. Keeping all this in mind, right? 120,000 miles, 4 years of age, and this is what we're looking at. This is the next group of folks that are getting these cars that are coming in, or starting to come in May 1st. So we have a deputy out there that's got a 2017 with 128,000 currently. That's what they're driving. I get spare patrol because that's where it's going to go afterwards. There's a K9 car that just come off the road. That's going to go to a spare, just take over the spare K9 position. There's a deputy out there that's driving a 2019 with 114,000, going to spare patrol as well. Another deputy with a 2019 vehicle with 74,000, little mileage, but the years out. You know, we're at 5 years now, and we start doing that. But that vehicle we're gonna have to save. We're gonna have to save that and reassign that to a patrol person because we just don't have enough vehicles at this one time. Deputy in, a deputy, 2020, got 96,000. Now you gotta remember, some deputies work a lot of overtime, and this particular deputy works a ton of overtime, and that's the reason why the mileage is so high. Another deputy, 2020, with 73,000, that will be reassigned to patrol. This one here is actually a sergeant car that's coming off 2020. That's gonna go to a CID person. Probably, they're on the next slide. We're gonna see some CID people over there that's driving some vehicles with high mileages. And then another deputy with 2019, 95. You know, the point I'm trying to make here realistically is we tell the towns we have, 120,000 miles for 4 years of age. And granted, we've had some time where we can't control how fast we get vehicles, but we gotta do the best we can to kind of stick with what we're holding the towns to, that's all, as far as general revenue deputies. Next slide, please. This is what the current fleet looks like for the other deputies that currently have cars out there. So as you can see, we got some older cars out there. We got a 2018, 19, and a 19. On top of those others, we're gonna have to keep another 19 down here. I put that one back down here. But, the 2020 cars, obviously, realistically, by what we have in the contract, the 2020 cars, all those, will be cited to be replaced the next time around, so in this 2024 budget. But my concern is some of these other cars that are older, 2018, 2019, those really should be replaced and probably moved somewhere else. But right now, we gotta use them because that's the situation we're in as it stands, okay? So, are you all folks all set with that, or?
Any
All right.
questions?
Any questions there? Next slide, please. This is what the criminal investigation division looks like. Now, as a rule, I oversee the first responders, right? All the cruisers, patrol people, first line responders. So really, I'm I'm really looking at the people that are going out there driving the blue light cars. But these folks do have to respond occasionally to calls of emergency. They all responded up to Lewiston, to the active shooter, et cetera, to help out up there. And this is what the situation is for some of their vehicles as it currently stands. You know, there's some vehicles up there that obviously get some high mileage, and some down here that don't look too bad, but it's more about the year that concerns me more than the miles at this point in time. It's just some of them are getting a lot of miles. There's one up there that's, you know, Detective Hall's probably gonna get that CID car, the Joe Dyer car that's coming off the road. Because she's driving a 2015 with 200,000, so she's probably gonna be the next one to get replaced. Next slide, please. I know there's a question on, you know, what we were driving as far as administrators. Just give you a snapshot there of what we have for cars. You know, Scott Smith's got a 2020. Well, his happened to be a patrol car that just came off the road last year, and because he was driving a 2015 Ford, and we upgraded him to a 2020. So, but for the most part, you know, we're all driving some older stuff. Here's some of the vehicles, like this vehicle's on should be, this one long, and that's what our patrol spare vehicles look like, which are the vehicles that detectives, when they're working overtime, they jump in to respond to emergency calls with, et cetera, as it currently stands. So, next slide, please. One of the things we want to talk about is the size. I've touched on it a little bit, but size does make a difference. And I obviously know that there's a price difference too as well. We're talking Ford Cruisers are going to be a little cheaper than Chevy Cruisers, but you know, size is the difference. You're paying a little more for a bigger vehicle. Some of the folks that really need some of the bigger vehicles are the folks on the ESU, the K19. We got a couple of K9s in these Fords. It's just, they're carrying a lot of stuff, because you got to remember, these folks, they work out of the car. They got everything. They got everything they need, all the gear, etc. And if one of the K9 handlers is actually on the TAC team, actually two of them are, but one's in the Chevy still. And you know, he shows up to a scene to get in his back, and things are falling out of the back, you know, at an emergency scene, and that's never real good to see. But some of these other aspects, I was on the ESU and the dive team for years, and you know, back when we first implemented towers, back in the early 2000s, I mean, I was driving a Ford Crown Vic, and I had scuba tanks, you know, actually seatbelt in the back seat, and my trunk was very full. So I can appreciate having a little space, the idea that we're having these folks out there trying to do the job of law enforcement, stopping vehicles, things like that, but we just need to give them more space, I think, as we move forward here with some of these vehicles. As you can see, the 2024 Ford Cruiser size is 87.8 cubic feet. That's in the rear area, the storage area, okay? And the Chevy Cruiser size is is 122.9 cubic feet, which is really a 33% increase in size in that rear storage area, in particular behind that second row seat, okay? Next slide, please. All right, I'm talking about the lifeboat cars, okay? Because as I said, 4 years, 120,000 mile replacement. We got 5 patrol vehicles, 1 K9 spare, 1 unmarked CID spare. We have administrative CID vehicles. They should be replaced every 5 to 6 years. Number of training vehicles is 2. Number of island vehicles is 2. Once we get rid of all our vehicles and we cannot use them no more at our level, at the patrol first responder level, they go elsewhere. I'm sure I saw 2 on the way in, just making the corner out here. Other county departments end up getting them, you know, Cumberland County Regional Communications Center, EMA, facilities. So there is an afterlife for these vehicles. It's not like we spend a lot of money on a car, and then we get rid of it after 4 years. These things stick around for a long, long time. I mean, the ones I see the fleet supervisor haul up on the hill, I mean, he's literally hauling them up on the hill. They are done by that time. So these are things to be thinking about. When you're spending money, a little more money maybe on a bigger vehicle, these things are around for a long time. Next slide, please. Here, I just showed a picture where one of our 2012 Chevy Tahoes, back when we first started, is up at the Regional Communications Center. Next slide, please. That's a vehicle facilities is using up at the bunker as well. Next slide, please. And that's EMA. EMA's got a couple of vehicles. That was the one that was in the lot. They actually drive in one of the other vehicles we just got rid of last year. It was in 2015. So, next slide, please. All right. So I know when people drive through the lot, they see all these vehicles like, we're hoarding them. But we're not really, because a lot of these vehicles down here are the state vehicles I'm talking about. Those are the vehicles that you need to have if your vehicle breaks down in the middle of the night, so we're not having to call someone to come in to work on it, fleet guy. Or if someone gets in an accident, when you're dealing with vehicles, anyone that's ever had anything mechanical, no matter what, it breaks. And it never breaks at the right time. It always breaks on a weekend or after dark or at 3 in the morning. So that's what those vehicles are. Now, some of these other vehicles, which are in the view of the camera, which are folks that, they're vehicles that we're looking for a full-time police officer to jump in and sit. So some of these are actually police vehicles. This one's a Standish car. This is a Cumberland County general revenue car, another general revenue car. So some of them we're just waiting to hire people to get them in there so they wouldn't be in the lot. But I know when you drive through the lot, it looks like we got a lot of cars. But also the aspect that when CID works overtime, they're required to come in, jump in to a patrol vehicle. This is a patrol shift overtime, not a detail, but patrol shift. And they jump in, they swap their stuff over, they jump into a car, and they're out on the street. Next slide, please. All right, the end. All right, this I put there. This is one of our vehicles that Christmas time last year, a gentleman had a little too much alcoholic beverages. And this deputy was at a traffic stop in Gloucester, and fortunately he was out of the car. But this guy didn't even know where he was, when the deputy approached him. Matter of fact, he asked the deputy why he parked his car in the middle of the road. There was nowhere in the middle of the road. But this is a cruiser. It was a fairly new cruiser, but it gets demolished. We were able to get $25,000 back, but we know that cruisers at least $45,000, so that's half. But when you start losing vehicles like this, then the detriment of the whole picture decreases even more, because I already told you, we should have probably had 4 new cruisers in that 18-month budget. So, thank God the deputy was out of the cruiser dealing with the traffic stop itself, because had he been in that car, I'm sure he'd been very injured. But here's another good example of this is a Ford smaller vehicle. It was kind of a side swipe hit. But the bigger the vehicle is going to be more protection for our deputies out there working the street. And as we know, we talked about the bicyclists, the people walking, people aren't paying attention. You can hit a marked cruiser with all its lights on in the middle of the night in the dark. So that's about it. Do you have any questions? Yes?
Yeah, Carrie, I was surprised that the 23 quotes went up 33%. The last quote you gave us, Chevy and Ford, was 52 and 55. That's a 33% increase. The other years, the increase was nominal.
Yeah.
It was a few thousand. What's the explanation for that? And have we pursued other quotes?
Yeah, so these, you gotta remember, in October, I call these guys, because these guys are the subject matter expert, and say, hey, October 2023, is this what we're talking about? You're talking about for this year, right? So I'm trying to figure out, what do I need to put for money in for July 1, 2024? So I tell them that, and they're like, hey, I think this is where you need to be. And that's where I gotta go for. If they're telling me this is where I need to be for a number, for a car, you know, and how do I chop it up? I guess I gotta chop it up as this.
Well, do you inquire? Because that's just a remarkable increase.
Well-
If you look at 21 and 22 and 23, why are we doing business with someone that, it sounds like they're gouging us? Why would it go up 33%?
You know what, I cannot tell you, why they would tell me those numbers. I cannot tell you why they would tell me those numbers. The only thing I can tell you is this: no matter what line of work you're in, it's more for labor, it's more for materials, it's more for shipping. Because Baltimore now, they're not gonna give you a quote that's less. They're always gonna be high when you're talking.
Yeah, but how much do we push them and say, we've been doing business with you for all this time, and $400,000 a year, and you are going up 33%?
Well, Commissioner, one thing we do is, he got a quote from one entity that we've dealt with in the past. When this bid goes out, it goes out to
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's why I was asking.
dealerships.
All right,
Yeah, I'm
that's good.
sorry. Yeah, so
So
we
those
haven't
are the-
sent that out. This is just a telephone call. Hey, Neil, I know you're in the car business. What do you picture the
Right.
cars are gonna be worth, or at going for, come July 1, 2024? That's how that conversation will go.
It just seems like a big increase, and if it's gone up that much, we need to do something budget-wise accordingly, but a 33% increase when the earlier years were marginal, 5-10%
I
increase.
can tell you that 2023, March 2023, I walked him in a quote, and it's like $45,000. I'll be surprised if July 1, 2024, we're buying that same car for $45,000. Does that make sense?
I know what you're saying, I just,
Okay.
the increase is a lot.
You have something?
I just wanted to expand on that. I know the cost has gone up and the supply's gone down, and it's very difficult to find cars. And we ran into a problem where the dealership couldn't get our order. The car companies don't make money on police cars. There's really 3 models of police packages now. The Ford, the Chevy, there's a Dodge, which is a real small car. A couple of years ago, the chief in Saco sent out 4 officers out to Ohio. It's the only place they could find cars. They drove up 1 car and drove 4 additional cars back. So the price has gone up. It was in the 30s and now it's in the 50s, and they're just difficult to get a hold of. And we're under a time crunch. If we don't get a bid in at a certain time, we get further down the list of cars.
So my question is whether anybody has explored a second piggyback with an outfit like the Mass operation that you bought vehicles from last year or the year before, whenever it was.
So when we send out the RFP, they're included in that, so they can bid on it. I think it was last year that.
Do they have an incentive to bid on it?
I'm sorry?
Do they have an incentive to supply us with cars
I
unless we
don't
ask
think they
them?
do. We're not when they're selling the Mass State Police about 500 DOT. They're a big deal. But, they want to do business with us, don't get me wrong, but we're buying 10, 12, 13 cars. Mass State Police, they buy, or DOT, they buy 500 vehicles. So the incentive is with them, not necessarily with us.
What about Portland or the state police or
Well,
all of them?
Quirk usually gets the state bid. So that's why they tend to be cheaper. They tend to be cheaper than most, believe it or not. The problem was that one year, they couldn't fulfill the bid because Ford didn't give them the cars. So,
Steve?
Yeah, you've got a number of categories that you talk about. You talk about administration, detective, supervisor, deputy, contract deputy, which I presume is the same, and then training and et cetera. Is there any, have you ever given any consideration to changing the specs for certain categories so they would be less costly? Because those vehicles aren't pushed like they are when you're frontline?
yeah, so you gotta remember that we only buy frontline vehicles to replace the law enforcement police. And then, like the court officer will get a hand-me-down front. Now, the CID car, it comes in, it's a different administrative car. It's still a police package because these folks are gonna be driving it to an emergency, of course. But that tends to be a little cheaper, only because of the way they build it. I don't know if it's the color or what, but it tends to be a little cheaper. We're not talking a lot of money. We're talking $500-600. But some of those other folks, as far as what you're talking about, those cars, they go through one of these. They're a frontline car first, and then some of those other people get those cars. Like the report officer in training executive. Does that make sense?
Well, I hear that's the strategy that you use,
Yeah.
but there's no reason why for lack of category, that you could have a couple of categories. So you have one category that maybe because they're not pushed like they are in the front line, that they last either longer or for another year, or, and they're not as expensive because you haven't got to have all the package that you've got with, when you have a frontline car.
Well, there was a period of time back a long time ago, my age was something, in the 2000s, when like CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, they just go out and buy a grocery getter for a cop, basically. Cop. But I'll tell you right now, the police package guys, I mean, they're not making a lot of money, but if you just go out and buy some of these other cars that I talked about, the grocery getter, you're still spending a lot of money. And then the issue is, they're not gonna drive, you know, it's not a car you can be a first responder to, even for a death scene, so to speak. If a detective has to respond to a death scene or a serious crash, they're not gonna get into the, Chevy, whatever, Chevy, Cruze, I guess, Chevy Cruze, much cheaper car, and they're not gonna jump into one of those, put a blue light on the roof and drive to a death scene. That's just not gonna happen, that's all. But we used to do that years ago, for that same reason, because the cars were a little cheaper, maybe, back then, but we've decided that we gotta go with these package type vehicles. All these folks are gonna use one to do emergency at one point or another.
Can you give us a quick and dirty on what the differences are between a police package and a regular?
Yeah, it's just suspension, the ability, the system, the alternator's bigger, suspension, usually like the chip. The chip is programmed, used to be speed. And most cars are chipped out at 99 miles an hour, but the Cruises that we buy are chipped out at 130. So
What's the,
130 miles. Not that you go that fast, but I mean they're high performance, better suspension, enhanced brakes, things of that nature.
He said,
Better car.
everything but these two categories.
the state police uses the same, and what about Portland PD? Do they also always go with enhanced?
I don't know about Portland, to tell you the truth, but
The cruiser back in the day, it used to be that the dealership in Augusta would buy 20 cruisers, and they would be parked just outside the state capitol, and they would literally advertise, try to get people to buy their
Come and get
cars.
them, yeah.
Come get them, and it got to the point where there'd be leftovers, and they'd sell them for half
Oh,
price.
I
yeah.
don't know that.
They couldn't get rid of them, so now
Sad.
you can't find them.
Sue, do you have some?
No, I'm all set. No, I'm sorry.
I will add to that. I'll even date myself. So about 35 years ago, the sheriff decided to buy CID, like cheap cars. And so they issued them out, and that was the worst science fair project they'd ever done because they weren't durable, they kept breaking down, and the mechanic had to kind of know a different type of vehicle type thing to actually work on them. So I remember those days, and quite frankly, they were in the garage more than ever. And after that, the sheriff at the time said, we'll never do that again because the durability, it was just, these things are being pounded day in, day night, idling, and you want that durability that kind of comes with a car, so.
Dodge came out with a car back in the mid-90s, Dodge Intrepid, and they were pushing it as a front-wheel drive, great car for police cars. The warranty work that they had to do, because it wasn't a cruiser package, an interceptor package, got to the point where they stopped honoring the warranty and no longer sell it to law enforcement agencies, because these cars run 300 miles a shift, 5 days a week, 24 hours a day, different weather environments, and the cars just, they're pretty beat on. And the new cars that we buy, Commissioner Court, go to the front line. Everything stems as a hand-me-down from the front line. So once they're in patrol for those 4 years, 120,000 miles, then they become my car or detective's car. And with that mileage, one of the problems we've had is my car, for example, is a 2017. I don't drive it in the patrol, I'm not responding to calls. I do respond sometimes to things that happen in the middle of the night in the county, but I've had a new transmission put into the car, and I've got a Frankenstein motor in the car now Steve was able to hobble together and put it in the car because the other one died. So the maintenance costs and issues have been a problem. We're hoping to have someone for maintenance here tonight, but the transport Suburban that we have, which doesn't fall under police services, but we just had that the transmission replaced in back cars in 2015. The quote from the dealership was $7,000, and Steve was able to do that for about almost half, a little bit more than half price to fix that. So the longer we have the cars, the worse condition they are. It just becomes a maintenance nightmare. It's no longer just maintaining oil changes and tires and brake jobs. It's transmissions, engines, pretty significant. Steve is the best kept secret.
Yeah, it is. He knows his stuff.
Have you done an analysis, Kerry, what it would be if we pushed that time period out to 5 years on 140 or 150,000 miles? We obviously would save 2 or 3, maybe 4 cars, new cars being purchased on a cycle. You know, you'll have more maintenance costs, but I mean, at the end of the day, it always comes down to the budget. Why is it a magic number that it's 120,000 miles in 4 years?
You stole my question. You looked at my notes.
Oh, sorry.
Damn you.
No, go ahead. So when I was chief deputy, I had to wrestle with that because we had old cars back then too. And there's no standard. I can tell you the state police is about 80. Every vehicle, when it gets 80,000, regardless, at that time, it was replaced. I checked for a national standard. I think the thing that we haven't talked about is that the stuff they're putting on the roads are very corrosive. You know, fire departments replace fire trucks at 30,000 miles because it's not the mileage, it's not the operation of the vehicle, but it's the rusting out. What concerns me, and we were talking about Suburban, is when I heard that we were replacing a transmission, it's like, what does the frame look like? Because we don't want these vehicles hurling down the road and have it come apart. So I had, and Standish was the issue, they didn't want to replace cars. They thought that, hey, I've got a car that's got 200,000 miles, it runs all the time. Well, that's good, but you're not driving the car like we're expecting our folks to drive the car. So really, we came up with something that was pretty liberal as far as mileage and the 4 years. I will say this, when we went to SUVs, I thought we could eke out, especially if we were using 8 cylinders, because they tend to be a little bit more durable than a 6-cylinder or a 4-cylinder, that we might be able to get 5 years out of it. But, you know, the 120 for a frontline vehicle, that's a lot of mileage. And like I said, they're idling at scenes with the lights going. They got lights, they got computers, everything's drawing off the battery. I mean, we're putting these things through a lot. So, you know, could we go up? Yeah, I guess. I wouldn't want to be that guy that says, I think we could do it, because I don't have a crystal ball on what these vehicles are going to do at 4 years, 5 years, 140,000 miles. You know, the other thing is that we do try to move them around and reuse them when we can. But the bottom line is that they're taking a pounding, and we expect them when they go out to start all the time and do everything in odd weather. And that's why we want police package vehicles, because they're built for the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. But that's how we came to 124, is we needed a standard. It didn't really meet all of the other standards. It was a little higher, but it was something that the commissioner at the time was willing to support, and we fed it back to the Standish Town Council at that time.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Patty, did you have something?
Yeah, but did you, Jim, did you have your hand up?
I was just gonna follow up on the number of years. The vehicle list that looks like you're switching out, there's a lot of cars in there, like 84,000 miles. And the first thing that jumped out at me was, that's not even broken in yet. And we're replacing it. And I guess I just wondered whether a consideration of 5 years, 110, 115 would be something to chew on, just because it's harder to get these vehicles. The vehicles, 110,000, 115,000, that's it. If you're doing 84,000 over 4 years, that's 20,000, 21,000 a year. Just something to consider. I just think that at 84,000, 85,000 miles, it's hard to to think that we need to switch out that vehicle for a new front line for that person, even though it's 4 years. And I guess I always think of, it's more the odometer than it is the years. If you buy vehicles, you're always looking at the odometer. If you're buying tractors, you're always looking at the odometer. The tractor could be 35 years, or a boat could be 50 years, and you're always looking at hours that vehicle is being used. So I guess I would just ask for some consideration of whether that 5-year, 110, 115 is doable.
Yeah, so when it comes down to figuring out which vehicles we're gonna move around, a lot of times, you know, Fleet isn't here, but a lot of times I have to reach out there. You know, I'm not a mechanic, you know, he sees these vehicles coming in, he gets them off on the left, he knows what he's looking for, you know? I bet you might drive a car and it probably goes 175,000 miles, and you get up on the left, and you're like, this car doesn't even look like it went 175. But there's other people out there that drive a car, probably like it's got stolen, unfortunately. And, you know, I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is.
Well, that's training, though.
I understand, I understand.
training.
I understand what you're saying, but, that's just the difference of people. So, although there's 84,000, maybe a vehicle coming off at 84, I can tell you right now, that isn't like going, that isn't going anywhere but somewhere else within, probably CID or somewhere in the division. Or if we have to, we'll keep it another year. As you can see, we've had to keep some anyways.
So,
Sorry, I was just gonna say, one thing that we talked about was the car for the mission. And I'll use one of our canine officers, for example, he does a lot with the SWAT team. And he's got a lot of equipment strapped in his front seat next to him, the back seat of the dog, and also in the back of the car. And it's a risk for a rollover, kind of loose material in the car. But we don't feel that everybody needs a car. There's a mission where a school resource officer could use a smaller car. They might not have the equipment and that sort of thing. So it's really kind of a combination of finding that sweet spot of the different models that might be more effective.
Show you a car that's-
Someone's on the dive team and the SWAT team.
Just load it up.
That's a lot
You
of
got it.
equipment. Sergeant Parody is on the tactical team. He has a compressor tank in the back of his car for the cover. So it's just a lot of extra. Sometimes you see the Fords and they kind of look like low riders in the back because they're pretty loaded. But there is a role for different cars with different sizes.
well, I will have to say this. I can't picture a large V8 with a enhanced suspension system and an enhanced braking system. You say, well, 80,000 miles later, we gotta move on to something else. I mean, it just, I mean,
Defies
one
logic.
of the reasons for paying extra money for an enhanced vehicle is enhanced performance, I would assume. That's just an observation. I don't trust myself to have a very good outlook or opinion on kind of the mechanical and operational issues that a fleet manager would know about. So, you know, but it does surprise me to hear that something with less than 100,000 miles with enhanced installations to begin with, you know, it becomes dysfunctional in some
Well,
way.
it doesn't become dysfunctional, so that's gonna replace some of our spares. So you gotta remember that, I don't have it. Think about the spare. That's the spare line back there, keep going, I'll tell you where. Right here. So that 84,000 mile vehicle is gonna replace one of these. Then it's got 123, 115, you know, 180,000. You see what I'm saying? So it's not going offline, it's not going to a cemetery. We're still using it, but we just won't use it every day, et cetera, if that makes sense to you.
See, yeah, the chief deputy made a good point, but I guess to kind of turn it over on you is, how do we take advantage of these structural differences in jobs when we get vehicles?
Like, earlier you were making the point about buying a lesser car for detectives.
But to match a job
To match
has,
the job.
that puts lesser demand on a vehicle.
The problem being is that basically our car purchases all start as a frontline vehicle, and then they become secondary cars to everything else. So if we were to buy a new CID car, which sometimes is in our budget. This year it was in the budget, but it was cut. We can buy a Ford Taurus car for that. But just about every car in the fleet always starts off as a marked patrol car, and then my car, I think, is on the 3rd series of its life. It becomes, if it's decent, becomes a spare, could become a detective's car, could become an administrator's car, could become a training car. The older they get, the less reliable they are, and then they become the court officer's car or whatever. But as far as buying a specialty car, that would cost the county more money. Because we would say, we're not going to use any frontline cars for detectives now. We'll just buy detectives their own line of cars. I don't know if I'm.
But I guess I failed to, how do you jump to the point that that's less, be as expensive?
So any of the cars, so we're not buying specialty cars for other things other than patrol. Everything, those used cars, they trickle down everything else, I guess is what I'm saying.
All right, then to that point, then if you're going to take the demand off the frontline car by shifting them to something that doesn't take that kind of demand, can't you expand this so instead of being 4 years, it's 6 years?
I think it is. 4 years is as a first line. It may be 5 if the person doesn't drive. I've seen people go 5 years and they only have 60,000 miles because they don't put on a lot of miles. I've seen people that rack up the miles at 3 years.
Fine.
But my point is that once it gets that 4-year level, it still stays in the fleet and is used. So oftentimes it's 8, 9, 10 years that we're using these vehicles. We're not taking them off and selling them at 84,000 in 4 years.
I hear you. So we're in agreement that if you take them off the front line, they can go to a lesser demanding.
And that's what they do.
All right.
That's what they do.
But you've got more vehicles than you need to do that. So when you drop them out, you must have some that you make the changes. And it eventually will back you up so that you don't need to do that whole thing.
I guess I'm a little confused by your question, I'm not following you, but I know that the cars we have in our possession, we use are about 9, 10 years old by the time we turn them over. And
All of them?
they're pretty rough, all of them.
Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense with the numbers of cars that you've got on the road. I mean, you just take a look at the deputy and the district and the contract deputies. You got a lot more vehicles there that are frontline that you'd have to move over to a lot less numbers.
Contract
Yeah,
cars,
but they don't move
they
over.
go right back to the town, sir. They go right back to the town. They buy the vehicle, we give them right back to the town. So we
Right,
don't, those are out of our.
They're not built into our budget at
That's
all.
right, so it's kind of one of those things, and you know, some of the towns really enjoy the aspect that they're gonna get that back, because they do use it for maybe an animal control officer, or another code enforcement job, or something
Fire
like that. they have
department.
within the town. So those, you gotta take those out of the picture, those go.
Well, even so, that's 22. And then you got the patrol spares. I mean, you got enough vehicles here so you should be having extra.
So I think the other way to look at it is, if we get 9 or 8 this year, 8 cars come in, there are gonna be 8 cars that are gonna leave at the very bottom end. They're gonna flush out. So it may be an EMA car, maybe a maintenance car, it may be a jail car, it may be a training car, but we buy 8, 8 are gonna go to the junk pile, and those are usually the 15s, 16s, and 17s. So 8 drop off, 8 come in, and then they start going down the funnel, if you will, being utilized. So we're never gaining vehicles, we're just new ones, and the other ones drop off. Does that make sense? We're not gaining vehicles.
But if we postpone the new vehicles, not all 8, Kevin, but say, run them for 110,000 miles, like Jim would suggest, 115,000 miles, there will be a savings. And we won't have to purchase every year 8 new cars. Maybe it'll be 6, maybe it'll be 5.
It's possible,
I think-
and I think we're.
I think we need to look at every possibility that we can make a savings. I think, for whatever reason, there's a policy about 8 cars turnover. We need 8. We have to fulfill our service requirements to serve our constituents out there in the county. However, I think from a financial point of view, we could get more out of these new cars. And we start, maybe what we should do this next cycle, go for 110 or 115,000 miles on those cars instead of 84 before turning them over. Everyone out there, all the people out there understand what it's like to have an older car, right? The sheriff's department does, but all our constituents out there in the county do. So, when someone tells me they have 84,000 miles on a car, I'm saying, I'm gonna get at least twice that on my vehicle, and lots of other people are too. And I understand it's different because there's a lot of more wear and tear on this car, but I think there's a compromise here that'll save the county and our citizens money, while still get the same overall service out of the fleet. And I think we need to find that balance. We're not there yet, so.
Well, I would say, and again, I'm not an expert at this, but we've lost since COVID, we haven't bought the rotation. And the rotation is really the number of cars on the front line, okay? You're right. Can we go 5 years? Maybe we can. Like I said, actually coming down to 115 is lower than our standard of 120, right? So, I mean, how can I disagree with that? It's just, the point is you need dependable cars, and they filter down. So we're not taking them and junking them at 84. It's being used probably by CID, and then one of us will get it after that. So we're getting rid of them at 7, 8 years and close to 200,000 miles. But again, it's just, if you buy 7 and you need 9 each year to make that 36 every 4 years, then, if we get down to 5 years, then we're gonna need 35. But we can never be without that 7 a year. And we've lost years because of it's not available. You buy it, it comes in 18 months later. So, I mean, we've been set back, mentioned the CID. I mean, I cut the CID before it even got up here because they wanted a new CID position, and I thought you can't have a new CID car and a new position, so, we cut them based on what we need and what our mission is for that particular budget. So, it's not a perfect science, and I will tell you, it was much easier when I sat in that chair because we were talking about 18, 20,000 for a car, and you're right, it's gone through the roof. And the bottom line is, when you talk to car dealerships, they make no money on this. This is a pain in their neck. They'd rather make electric vehicles and, hybrids and stuff like that. Police vehicles, not a moneymaker for them. They do it because they have to, when we're having the same issue as somebody on the West Coast.
I have no questions. I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Patty?
Thank you. So just a couple of things in the weeds. You said you lost a officer and a dog to the warden service?
Yes.
So now we have two canine folks? Is that right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
What's our goal of canine folks? Do we want the county to have 5, 2, 10?
So this is, we have 3. The
Three.
budget.
Oh, 3, okay.
Yeah, one of the gentlemen gave up his canine.
Yeah,
After 5 years
Oh,
because he
right.
had a younger child. He couldn't keep up with it.
Right.
Then you get the 4th one, which is the contractor standard, so they pay everything. They
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
the dog,
Yeah.
the car,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with us,
right,
other than it works under us.
right. So we have, for us, not Standish, we have
3.
3 canine cars. Okay. But we bought a canine car in 2017, 2019, 2022, 2021, and 2023.
Right.
That's a lot of canine cars.
Yeah, I mean,
Did one get,
we replaced-
did one get smashed up or something,
No,
or?
you're replacing older cars. We're replacing older cars, like
Okay.
the one that's getting
Or
replaced.
from
with
2017
Scan.
to,
This is 2017. right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
That one came off the road last.
yeah. So you have
So-
2019, 2021, 22, and 23. So that's an extra canine
So the
car?
20 no,
No.
the 22 car is probably the canine car you're talking about.
Okay,
Which slide are you on? I'm not sure.
I'm looking at-
We have 3
yeah.
cars. Basically, we got a car coming in this year, and it's
Okay.
replacing a car. Can you move it back to the replacement cars? Yeah. Next one. Yeah, so it's replacing this one at 84. I get it. It's 2019, it's a 5-year-old car.
Yep,
All right, 84.
Yep.
That's where the newest one.
Yep.
The last car that you talked about replaced that 2017. And that was
Yep.
probably 2022.
okay. And then we have the 2022, the 2021, and the 2023. So I'm just, I
I
don't know, it
don't think
seems
there's
like.
a 20.
No,
it-
maybe
it-
not. I looked at
I don't think
the,
it's a 2021
I looked at the
car.
spreadsheet, maybe.
Because right now, the other car out there is a 2019 Chevy Tahoe
Okay.
that's currently on the
Okay,
street.
so I guess, this is just a small, small case of kind of trying to figure out, understand the budget and every department and what their needs are. And I think what I'm hearing more tonight is, I hear kind of standards, like 120K, 4 years. We always get 8 cars, we get 1 CID car. Those are assumptions. Like, if anyone does a budget, you have assumptions that you put into the budget. But I think what I'm hearing is, just because you have those assumptions today, those assumptions may not still be holding true next year or the next year. If money gets tight, what can we do creatively together to make sure that you get what you need as best you can, but we also can justify how many vehicles are being purchased each and every year? And my other concern is, because of this backlog of vehicles, when you say we ordered them in 2022, but we didn't get them to 2023, the car's gonna say 2022, but it didn't get any miles on it because we haven't gotten it yet, right? So it's a little bit of a, gotta follow the bouncing ball when you know how long the car's been there.
Right.
Because of that whole thing, and it seems like 2 years of that we need to follow along to understand how old
The
is
good thing
this
is,
car.
the fleet supervisor isn't here today, but
Yeah.
he keeps real good track on when the car gets delivered, those type of things.
Yeah.
So exactly right. So when we sit down at a table to determine what cars are up, he's got this paperwork in front of him, so we have those conversations and say, okay,
Yeah.
this car came in this date.
Right.
This car came in at that date, so.
I think, the information has been great. It's been good to see how things are organized, but I just think having an open mind to how are we gonna make this work? How will the budget work? If it's a tight year, what can we massage? What can we make a little bit differently, or have a different assumption to say we can still support this? Because I think the reason we're here is there was a lot of either misunderstanding or mystery behind how do we do these vehicles, and how old are they, and who gets what? And to Commissioner Gordon's point, what's the strategy and the matrix of things? Is it always gonna be a Tahoe and a Ford? What about the Dodge? I mean, buying for the need of the position versus we always get frontline vehicles, that's an assumption, that we always buy frontline vehicles. It doesn't have to always be the assumption, but that is one of your assumptions, and I'm hearing it, but I also want to know that we
Police
make.
package vehicles, is that what you're
Yeah,
referring to?
yeah, yeah.
we
to-
get police package vehicles.
Yeah, to Commissioner Gordon's point of what's your strategy of a mix of cars for different needs and different people? I think if we saw a little bit more of that, it would make more sense to me, but I understand your strategy of what you try to do and how you try to reuse it. I understand it, but just want to bring it up as, I guess, a point of topic of ongoing conversation. There'll be another budget next year, and we'll see where we're at, and thank you for the information.
I got a question, Jim.
I do have one other question, if you don't mind. Well, just kind of a follow-up to Commissioner Smith. The detective's vehicle, is the reason, or one of the primary reasons that that's a police package vehicle, that they are occasionally called to back up incidents that would require more personnel than
Most definitely, yeah, most definitely. They could be on the street, they could even be partaking in a chase, serious chase, They could be jumping in because they're the first one there. We don't normally like that, but that could happen based on circumstances.
I assume that there's a well-developed high-speed chase policy.
Oh, there is, yes.
Okay.
Just on the vehicle again, around 2008, I looked into buying like a Hertz for the CID. And the mechanic at the time, I ran that by him because I thought, well, we can go get a program vehicle that's being auctioned off. And we get newer vehicles and wouldn't have to wait for those to be frontline and drip down. The bottom line was, the fleet manager at that time said, don't do it. So, you know, it's kind of been one of those things where you can do it, but it's up to the mechanic, because you know, right now he has 2 vehicles he's got to worry about. A Ford Explorer and getting tools for that and the parts for that, and a Chevy Tahoe and getting parts for that. If they had a Volkswagen Rabbit, he'd have to get certain vehicles for that, certain tools for that, and then he'd have to study up on how do you change a, you know, so again, I can see it from a fleet services, keep it simple. Right now, I gotta worry about 2 things, a Ford Explorer, Chevy Tahoe, I don't have to worry about anything else, so. And again, I can't speak for him, but the guy before him made it real clear, program vehicles, I don't wanna see him come through the door.
And I think that, you know, your list of spare vehicles is amazing. I don't think many, you know, who else has that amount of spare vehicles that they could draw from? I don't know what the assumption is there, is how many spares we want to have
Well, you know,
going forward, but.
just in that incident the other day, thank God it didn't happen in Cumberland County, but, you know, there's 2 cruises that got shot up over there.
Yeah.
Those cruises
Yep.
probably not gonna be used again.
Yeah,
you know?
I-
So God forbid if
Right.
that happens here,
Knock on
we at
wood.
least have 2 that we can grab. Or, you know, I mean, you never know what's gonna happen.
You're right, absolutely, you do never know,
It's
yeah.
kinda, try to do the best you can.
One of the
I
issues
got a
with
question.
is
Where was the cruiser shot?
we had a fender bender at the school. When
Yeah.
the SROs got back to your by a flat truck. It
I don't mean to
happens.
laugh, but,
Cars around.
yeah.
It was minor damage to the fender.
Yeah.
Enough where you couldn't drive it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't structural. 4 months the car sat in
Yeah.
a parking lot before the body shop could get the parts in it. So,
Yeah.
you know, that car sat there, you drove the spare vehicle.
So maybe the amount you have is the right amount for the spare list. I mean, that's the thing, just knowing, yeah, that's what that's what we're shooting for. That's our goal as a county, that we want a spare car list of X amount or so that we can depend on. And that's, you know, I think the rationale was always, you know, the part that I enjoy hearing is just, why do we have what we have and what purpose does it serve? So, thank you.
The paperwork I gave you was just a showing the car, particularly ESU guy, his back's all filled and his back seat's filled too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean,
Right.
virtually, he can't carry a prison.
When we all had kids, it looks like the back
I'm
of our
gonna
cars,
say,
right?
well, nothing new.
I have one-
Bob, Sue's been trying to
I
ask a
have,
question here
oh,
for
it's
a while.
one more question and I have one, I have a comment. Why is with the deputy's car a 2017 and 128,000 miles? Well, that goes against everything. You know, is that because it's a Standish car?
You know what happened there? That was a schnuck car, and he didn't use it much. And then you got a young deputy, and guess what he does? He drives.
Drives, oh, I see, okay, gotcha.
And you know, that's the thing, you're
Right,
weighing this up.
okay.
There's certain people
Oh.
that do different patrol
Chose, right,
activities.
okay. And my other comment is, and my commissioners are probably gonna shoot me for saying this, but, is that I understand that you can't have like 3 different kinds of vehicles, especially for CID, because what are you gonna do with them? You know, you're gonna be, we're tied into, you know, we're keeping that, lesser package or car for CID, you're not gonna be able to give it to a patrol, and you're not gonna be able, you know, to give it, you know, maybe some of the command staff, but you're less gonna be, we're stuck with that car staying with CID.
It's not it's not a perfect situation.
No.
I'll be honest and tell you, it's not a perfect situation. At the end of the day, you have to buy something and replace stuff. You know, stuff doesn't last forever. And that's what we've tried to do. This 8 car plus the CID, that's been in business for
Yeah.
years. So, you know what, I'm just saying right now, we're struggling with the idea that we're not getting cars every year because of, you know, circumstances, you know, so, and this is where we're at, that's all.
So why is with Joe Dyer's car going to CID if it's only got, it's 84,000 miles in
Yeah,
it?
so he's getting a new one,
Oh,
and that
he's
one's
getting
going to, Ashley Hall's got 200,000.
Yeah,
on her
so,
CID car, so.
oh, okay, so
they-
Joe's
they're
car's
fixing-
going,
Trying to fix a problem.
okay,
fix a
gotcha,
problem, you know.
okay, yeah.
But like I said, we sit down with the fleet supervisor, we discuss all this information, he has the paperwork, we talk about it, he sees the car, he's the mechanic, I'm a cop. You know, I have to work off what he tells me, you know, and
Do we need
That's
to
the
have
best
him
thing.
come in? do we need to have the,
Not tonight.
well, not tonight, but the
Oh, come on, Jim.
fleet manager will come in, no? Okay.
We'll have a little conversation
Okay.
about it when people have some ideas, and then if we have something else we want to do, then that's what
Okay.
we'll do. Steve, did you have something else before we wrap
Well,
up?
yeah, I'd like to see a more comprehensive layout of the vehicles. You know, the vehicles, their age, their mileage, what category is using them. Because I think there you can begin to see if there's other patterns that you could use. If you get that in a spreadsheet, then you can manipulate it. So if you get a chance, I'd like to see.
But I think it's all there, it's just in
Yeah.
different pages for you. Every
Yeah,
card's
it's in
there,
there.
just all the different pages for you.
Oh, every car's not in there?
No,
And you could sort it if if all the cars are there.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, there's not.
Every card's there with the mileage and the year. Might be on a different page.
And I will say, and we've discussed this in various ways, every commission and every commissioner has the right to wonder and contest and analyze every dollar that gets spent. But there are some levels where the commission probably is not the best equipped entity to make certain types of judgments. And that's just something we have to be aware of as we go along. And unless we're gonna
If you're driving
order
a
up
cruiser
a large wrench set and go on down and see what the fleet manager has to say about what we find,
If
you
you're
know.
driving a cruiser from Baldwin to Hartsville, and you have to get there in a hurry, you want the best vehicle possible. That's all there is to it. So that's a long ways across.
Yeah,
I think I was in Baldwin last week, but
It's a long ways across.
But Kerry,
the road seems
it's
to
a fine
wander
town.
a little bit and go up and down.
The point is that I don't think anybody's arguing with that. Everybody, in fact, I suspect is in agreement that the frontline people should have what you're buying.
Right.
And that's exactly where they go.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that I agree that the people that don't drive on the front line and try to get from Baldwin to Harpswell in a short order need to have that. And there may be some point that you can make that separation so that you have a number of cars or a number of vehicles that are front line and a number that aren't, and that rotation just takes place within that.
And
But you gotta have the data. I mean, I'm sorry, I couldn't fathom from your report all that stuff that I just asked for.
And part of the data, frankly, would include whether the financial outcome of such an undertaking would justify the change that would be designed anyway. So that's, and we appreciate that's not necessarily your job, but we first say thank you to everybody that has participated in one of the longest workshops we've had in probably 10 or 12 years. So
It's good.
yeah, no, it's
Finally.
yeah. But at the end of it, you have to decide whether it's something that creates an action item or it doesn't. So we appreciate it. We're gonna take, unless there's anything further, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. We're gonna kick everybody out and have an executive session. For the moment, however, we just stand with the continuance of this meeting because we have to vote to go into executive session.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.